GBV has become a norm, which shouldn't be the case. I have been a victim, but today I choose to speak out for myself and for other women out there. Let us raise our voice against GBV, and we can fight it together.
So we are discussing the women's movement, how we have worked from the start, the things we have achieved, and how far we have gone. I think there was a question which was asked us, what is the women's movement? And the young people talked about NGOCC, which is the mother body of NGOCC is the mother body of the NGOs which work for the promotion of women in all spheres of their life. It's made up of so many organizations, and it is the rallying point for the women's movement. And there are so many organizations involved. And the women movement does not only involve the women's organizations, it involves all women. So I think the NGOCC is just the rallying point to mobilize everyone so that we can move together, including the women in political parties, women in the church, women in the corporate world. We all need to move together so that we can achieve a common goal. And I'll throw it to ladies. What are some of the things we have worked on? Maybe you can start.
Okay. Okay, so I'm from the National Legal Aid Clinic for Women, which is a member organization of the NGOCC. It was established in 1990, more than 30 years ago, before most of our children were even born. So 4 lawyers from the Law Association of Zambia, under the Women's Rights Committee, would set up tables at the YWCA every Friday so that women from the community could come and speak, because they realized that women could not afford to pay for legal services compared to men, because they were economically not able to meet those demands, apart from all the other things that they needed to do. So it started with 4 women setting up desks every Friday, and as it went on, it gathered momentum until the Women's Rights Committee brought it to us that maybe the Law Association of Zambia should set up their own an organization specifically for women and children. And that's how the National Legal Aid Clinic for Women came about. And up to now, from that time up to today, we offer free legal services to women and children. Want to speak about the VSU?
I'm Brenda Chembe, a superintendent by rank, coming from the Zambia Police Service Victim Support Unit. The women's movement have been very, very instrumental. If you look at where we are coming from as a nation, gender-based violence was very normal. You know, our men thought if they pay dowry, then you become their property. They will beat the wife at any time. They will beat the child at any time because they had paid dowry. So there was some women movement who rose against that, what was happening, that abuse. They talked about it to say it was a bad thing, and they engaged the Zambia Police Service Command at that time. And when they did this, they were ahead. So Victim Support Unit was based in 1994, but came into being in 1999 under the Act number 14 of 1999. So because of the women movement, Victim Support Unit came into being. And why was it birthed? It was birthed as a result of the same complaints, and it was the unit that was mandated to do what? To look into matters of gender-based violence. That is how come Victim Support Unit up to now is there and helping a lot of people that are facing gender-based violence. So the women's movement actually did a lot for this unity to be based in the Zambia Police Service.
Maybe you can talk about some of the things which we enjoy now as women, and we take them for granted. But a lot of effort went into it. You know, some things like maternity leave was not there. Um, Mother's Day, and women were discriminated against in the workplace because they had to go on maternity leave. So when they go on maternity leave, they come back for work, they found their job has been given to somebody else. They were not allowed to take Mother's Day when they were not feeling so well. Some women, once a month, they don't feel well. So that is something that the women movement also recognized and they fought for. Maybe you can talk about it.
So perhaps in speaking to what you have indicated in terms of the game now, I just want to perhaps go a bit back
Yes.
and speak a little bit about my experience. What I remembered was when I became part of the women's movement, it was not fashionable, you know. So you were in between. I want to belong to those. I mean, you've got your degree, so you want to belong to those women who seemingly believe because they've gone to school, I mean, they can get these rights, they're able to claim them, as opposed to understanding that because you're in such a privileged position, you were really fighting for those who are not yet there. And so I remember that the issue was actually women in development. If you remember, that's where we're coming from. And so because of that, I think you also got men believing that those that belong to the movement were just there to kind of like destroy, for instance, marriages, because if you belong to the movement and you are outspoken, seemingly you were married, and so you were trying to influence and cause problems in marriages. And so I think that it was difficult to belong to the movement because
Yes.
you were in between. You know, I want to belong to those that are not being attacked, those that, and I can make it on my own. I mean, I don't really need a movement, as opposed to understanding why you were there, that because you have been privileged, we're really trying to make it better for other people. So, for instance, when you speak about issues of maternity leave, you know, the argument also was that if a woman needs maternity leave, if a woman needs Mother's Day, if a woman needs to go off, then surely where's the competence? Because you're all in the workplace. And so why is it that you should give a woman days off, and yet at the end of the day, you're fighting for having the same salary as men?
Yes.
So men's salaries, it's justified. They at work every day. They don't have to take maternity leave. They don't have to deal with issues of are they competent? Why? Because it's just assumed that because he's a man, he is going to be competent. And sometimes that is actually it. Because I have the triple burden, isn't it? So I have to deal with the fact that society itself is discriminating against me. I have to deal with the fact that I'm the wife. I have to deal with the fact that I'm, birthing the children. I have to deal with the fact that I'm doing chores. Whereas the man is even calling, it's dinner ready. But we were all going to work. We're coming back at 17, but I have to take that burden. So if you do not, how shall I say, promote affirmative action. I know now, for instance, in grade 10 that, the pass rate for the girl is lower than the pass rate for the boy. And that's supposed to be positive discrimination, isn't it? So if you don't put in place those policies and those actions that make it, I don't want to say easier, but recognize that, aside the fact that I'm going to work, the man is not having the same burden. So if he's not having the same burden, it's very likely that when we get to the office on Monday, I may have to first of all put my act together because he had the opportunity the whole weekend, to look at issues. We go into a meeting. So almost as if I have to fight much more to be at his level, when in fact,
remember we were talking about equity on was it day one? When in fact you deal with issues of equity. When we go into that boardroom or when we go into that meeting, I'm really able to perform at the same level as him. So I think for me that was our struggle in
Yes.
in doing things like that. But maybe let me hand it over before I get carried away.
I mean, when you are talking about it being not fashionable to be part of the women movement, the core group, I think it was also risky. I think there were certain times when some women were bundled in a truck and taken to the cells because they were picketing for a certain cause. Does anybody remember that?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah. Maybe you can speak to that.
I am from the media, and so mine is to report, but I also have worked to report these issues around. I remember earlier we had a conversation around the tribunal. And I recall reporting as a young journalist those type of issues, following through. And today, interestingly, actually, I'm one of those people in the background who have been looking for those women to carry these stories so that our young people can understand where we're coming from. There's a conversation with some female lawyers who we have been talking to as media people, older media people who understand where we're coming from. Why back in the day when there were issues, for instance, around murder of men, which has become common because women are fighting back and fighting back viciously. It hasn't started today. Women started fighting back a long time ago. Not to say it is right, but those are some of the energies that women sitting at this table and those whose shoulders we have stood on have fought for. And even what she's saying, to find yourself reporting on issues around women movement, women's lobby, NGOCC, and all those organizations back then which supported women's issues, you could be victimized. And sadly, when you're coming from the media perspective, these stories, the media is predominantly male-led. They will not see the light of day. For you to get a headline on a women-related issue, no matter how strong it is very, very rare. Up until today, we're talking give or take about 18% only are the stories that hit headlines. And it should really be gruesome. And sadly, it's the same story with women participation in the movement, women participation in politics, in any area of influence. And with social media, and with you, our younger people, not completely understanding that social media too has a rule and an etiquette. If you don't understand, you abuse it. You see a story of a woman, young or older, which as far as you're concerned, you feel is trending because it's come to your timeline, you also circulate and put negative comments, not understanding what this woman is possibly standing for or fighting for. So these are some of the issues. When we talk about media specific, I think I recall the first female journalist in this country was a lady called Madame Sifuniso.
Yes.
She worked for Daily Mail, that before Daily Mail, Central Business Mail, or something like that. That's what it was called back then, and then it turned to then. And I recall reading a story about her where she talked about her first assignment under a male editor was to go and report on football. Now, you're not predominantly exposed to football. Back in the day, you are supposed to be sweeping, make sure that before you leave the house to go to school, you've swept the yard, you've washed the dishes.
Yeah.
And imagine, football is a preserve of the males in your home, in your homestead. And you go to work on your first day just to prove that you cannot do this work. It is a man's world. To this day, I think most of us, if not all of us, know that most media houses still do not have female heads of these institutions. We have a few female editors now, which encourage the fact that we can have a few more female stories. But sadly, because it's like she has said, it's generally a male-dominated world. When you submit that story to this female editor, She wants to be popular and liked by the overall owner of the media institution. She will not give that story headline. You will talk about the 2-year-old who's been sexually abused, who's been raped, and that story will not see a headline, but a political story will see a headline. The same editor. So where's the empathy? And this is why we need you to appreciate where the people seated at this table and those who are not here are coming from and what we're trying to do. And if you don't help push these agendas through the things that you're posting on social media, the way you're utilizing social media, you really need to get to a center where you realize what is important, what is pushing an agenda that will help me and my children and my children's children. What we are doing here will die. So you really need to appreciate who you are, find your space. You need to find your space and participate in this movement and don't allow it to die. Maybe others can contribute in other spheres.
Thank you for this space to also contribute a voice to this discussion. Again, Elizabeth Chintuband is my name. And I want to reflect back to the time when I identified myself with the women's movement. I think by virtue of being a young female, I started getting closer to the women's movement. My first encounter was when I met NGOCC. By then, I was just very new, relatively new in the Ministry of Agriculture, and they were sensitizing other women about the outcome of the Beijing conference. And then I felt as a young person, I belonged to that movement. And luckily in 2014, I was employed by an organization that was part of the women's movement then. And I started building my capacity in community mobilization, strengthening it actually, with an affirmative action of mobilizing the women to have a voice. Because if you really have to deal with the gender inequality, you really need to give a voice to the vulnerable and the disadvantaged, who are mostly women and children, especially the girl child. And up to this day, I find myself privileged that I belong to the movement from the time I started working, because throughout my working life, currently I coordinate a project at national level that mobilizes women, giving them the space to speak out, to voice out matters that concern them as women. So I'm privileged that all my years of working over 2 decades, I still mobilize the women to have a voice. And there's one thing that really could strike my mind, and whenever I would be with the women, you'd see that when you approach or you stay in the community, the women would be celebrating, dancing. And one day I asked them, I said, why are you dancing? And the women said, you don't know what you've done, you people, in this organization. You've liberated us. So liberated that they can have a voice, liberated that they can take up leadership, positions, decision-making positions, liberated that they can walk in any office of any policymaker and be able to voice out. And I'm speaking about vulnerable women. Poverty has a woman's face, it has a child's face, especially the girl child. You find that when poverty strikes, it affects the woman and the child. So when the women start advocating, and I was happy to come here to have listened to the focus that we need to enhance the advocacy for, advocacy by, advocacy with, and that advocacy we need to work as a collective. So for me, it is that energy that we started with as a women's movement that we need to sustain, and it can only be sustained when we have the young persons taking key interest in matters that concern them and matters that concern their mothers, because at the end of the day, all we are dealing with are issues that concern a female. So this is very good. Thank you.
This is very good. As we come towards the end, I think we need to remind ourselves that I think the struggle should continue. I think if you look at the landscape, you notice that even now, when we are talking of workplace, you find that women get lower pay, even if they are doing the same work as a man, And if we are looking at promotions, sometimes the women are overlooked for the promotion which they equally qualify for. So as young women, I think we need to learn some of these lessons from the struggle which has achieved so much. But then we should not relax, because I think we still need to keep the momentum. Otherwise, the gains will be lost. I think you need to say something, okay?
Okay, before we wind up, I'm sure especially the young ones are there thinking we are talking about women movements, etc., especially in Zambia. But do we have a law that protects the women? I should say yes, we have a law, we have a policy which we call the National Gender Policy. Okay, so this one protects the women, even the men, I should say, because we're talking about gender equality and so on. And when we talk about gender equality, we are not leaving out the men. So we have a law that protects the women, even as much as we are trying to promote gender equality. Now, how did we come up with this law? Ladies and gentlemen, especially the young ones, you should not say it's not just Zambia that is talking about gender equality. Okay, we are coming from the 18th century, etc. So now, if you look at where we're coming up from, we had women and men who started the movement of feminism. And from there, after fighting, I'm talking about especially the women. Yes, we had the men, but mostly the women, they were fighting against, abuse of women's rights, etc. So we had organizations that came in, organizations that fought gender-based violence and other things. So we had also women in development, because I'm trying to trace the history. We had women in development, which was talking about women getting involved, because the men were there, but women were not involved. So the aim of women in development was to ensure that women come on board. We do not want to be part of development, but we want to be in development. So we had WID, we had WAD, we had GAD. I hope you know what these initials stand for. Okay. Then back to the Zambian situation, we had the Ministry of Gender being formed, and that one has been helping us, or let me say it was helping us talk about women's rights and so on. But unfortunately, it was squashed. So we only have a department that talks about gender issues. It's still there. So through this department, we are still advocating for the rights of women and as well as the girl child.
I can say something.
Yes.
My name is Margaret, and I'm coming from Nyapachuma Memorial Foundation. And I came to be part of the women's movement by being a member of the Nyapachuma, and I'm grateful. In the first place, it's a voice to the young ones. The foundation, as we have heard, has been laid, and we're not going to reinvent the wheel. So ours is to build the next blocks on the foundation that has been laid. If you look at the logo for Nyapachuma, it is a generational journey where we are encouraging you young ones to learn from the older generation and tell your stories. So our encouragement is you need to tell your stories, because you've heard the stories of the elderly, of the elders, of the older generation, the struggles they went through. We haven't reached there and will never reach there, but we need to make improvements on what is already there. I'll give a personal example. When I joined employment from university, I was young, and it was a group of men, maybe 6 men, I was the only one. And every weekend we used to wake up, even including up to Friday. Saturday, we used to have overtime. My supervisor never asked me to come for overtime, and that was an extra pay. Everybody looks forward to overtime and get an extra pay. But for me, I was always left out. At first it didn't click, but later on it clicked. I said,
boss, why are you removing me from the list of overtime? And he made a comment, which I came to realize later, that he was not gender sensitive. And he said, I don't put you on the list because I want you to go and clean your house. Weekend is for women to sweep their bedrooms, cook, and do all the chores they didn't do during the week. I said, no, I have a house help, I have my sister at home, so I can also do overtime. It was a struggle. I came to know, even in the interviews, when they were interviewing us, there was an advert when we were graduating that those who want to join the mines, please go. There were no applications, they just said go to this division. So I went to Mufrila division. And the supervisor, who's the final authority to make a decision, everybody scored me the highest. But my immediate supervisor, who was supposed to be my immediate supervisor, scored me the least. So I'm told there was a discussion. How come? What did you see that we all didn't see? And he said, because she's a woman, she'll not put in the best. On paper, she looks the best. So there are already those preconceived opinions about women, and those are the things you are going to experience as well. My word is you need to be assertive. You need to know your worth as a woman, and that's why we are here. Tell your stories. How do you become assertive? By telling your story. You will tell your story so that those perpetrators will understand that you understand who you are, and they'll stop doing that. In the workplace, it's very common, but very silent.
Yes.
Because you find yourself, you're alone, But I want to assure you that at Nyapachuma, we are there to listen to your stories. And that's why I want to encourage you to tell your stories so that together we can find a solution. So that
Yes.
was my encouragement.
Indeed. I think you wanted to sort of.
Thank you so much. Just a brief background of YWCA, one of the oldest women's organizations, particularly in Zambia. It was founded in 1957 in Zambia, in Kitwe to be specific, by a Canadian woman named Margaret Hathaway. She was very instrumental in issues to do with women's rights. So YWCA works to promote gender equality and women's socio-economic empowerment. It also has been involved to address issues of gender-based violence and also to protect human rights for women and girls and children as well. It also works to strengthen economic situations of women and create safe spaces for women and girls. YWC has been instrumental in influencing some very crucial policies that have been that are there right now in terms of women's rights, regulations and norms that obstruct the rights and leadership of leadership as well. So just to mention that, back then, when before all of us here were born, I'm talking to myself and also to my young sisters there. We had our mothers who, some stories have not been told. Because of what they did, we are enjoying these things now. Because of the sacrifices that they put in place, particularly the maternity leave. The maternity leave has been very instrumental because, like what has earlier been mentioned, where even when you're pregnant, you can't apply for a job because the moment they just see the belly, they will just judge you as this one won't manage. So, these are the things that we have enjoyed as the young ones. The sacrifice that most women put their lives on the line to actually, when back in the days, it was not easy to talk about those issues. And just maybe to mention about the Intersection Act.
Yes.
I was hoping that any of the elders here could actually tell us, because a lot of women were, after being widowed, had their properties grabbed and they used to suffer a lot. So when your husband dies, the house is grabbed away from you, your property, your life is just shattered. So I'm just also curious about how that act came into place, because most women were suffering, and it really helped women to actually just gain their human dignity.
Yes.
Yes.
Maybe you can talk about that one. Yeah.
So the Interstate Succession Act. So the Interstate Succession Act is an act that prohibits a widow and her children or his children of being deprived of property after the husband or the wife dies. So previously, as Mbemba, especially from Luapula, by the time you're burying your parent, your relatives have swept the house. And even if your father had a house in his own name, that house now belongs to his brother or any other relative. So there was a woman who was based abroad, who Florence Mumba, I think, Bonyondo. So her and her husband worked hard, and then the husband got cancer and died abroad. But they brought the funeral back to Zambia. By the time they were after the funeral, the man's relatives took all the furniture from the house. They took the beds, they took the chairs, they took the stove, they took stoves and fridges to villages where there was no electricity, but everything was taken. So when Florence told people her story, it went as far as Parliament, but male parliamentarians refused to adopt the law that only spouses and children should benefit from when a husband or any partner dies. So until they went to a meeting was set up at the Cathedral of the Holy Cross, where these widows went and told their story to the late President Kenneth Kaunda. When he heard the story, he broke down and immediately convened an emergency parliament where this law was eventually passed. So the Interstate Succession Act now says that the only beneficiaries are the wife or husband and the children and parents. There are no brothers and sisters. There are no aunties and uncles to inherit from a deceased person's estate.
Just maybe I just come in on the distribution of the estate. In case some people are not aware, 50% go to the children. And when we talk about the children, we are saying children born both within wedlock or outside wedlock, as long as they are known. Then 20% will go to the spouse or spouses. In case this man or this woman had 5 wives, 10 wives, they'll get that 20% and share. The other 20% go to the parents. Then the 10% is the one that goes to the dependents. But again, when it comes to dependents, we always have an issue where sisters also want to claim to say, I was the dependent. The grandmother will also claim to say, I was a dependent. So when we're talking about a dependent, this is the person who relied on this man or woman for their livelihood. And also age, I stand to be corrected, age will be considered. We are not talking about someone who's 45, then they start claiming, say no. Or even those who are at school, yes.
That's where we find offenses, which we charge these people that perpetuate this vice. There are people that do not know that destroying a will is an offense. Many of them do not know. So they will just come and talk about it as if it's not nothing. Actually, our father even left a will, and then auntie, but if auntie destroyed that will, why didn't you come and report? So it is an offense to destroy a will. Also, depriving beneficiaries is an offense. If you are an administrator, you are not a beneficiary. Everything is tabulated in that act. So we really thank the women movement for having advocated for it, because it has really helped a lot. And what gives me a worry is that mostly it's the women that perpetrate property grabbing. This person is married. She also has a husband who also died at one time. He's the one that goes to grab property from the fellow the fellow woman. So actually, kudos to the women movement. They've done a lot. And you, our young ones, just like Margaret said, please take keen interest in knowing about this. Because if you don't know where all these things are enjoying came from, you will not know how to fight for them. And you know what it is with males. They completely take over. And then you start complaining when you've let go of something that we fought for us as your elders. So please take the route that we've taken so that you continue enjoying.
Yes, please go ahead. And maybe just to know that I think the women movement has been looking at all vulnerabilities, including the disabled. Even if they are men, they are also included to say they need protection and support. And also the blatant disregard for the constitution. This is something that the women movement has protected. I remember that we had one president who wanted to change the constitution and go for a third term. And the women movement rallied with other like-minded organizations like the church and the Law Association of Zambia and said no third term because we want the constitution to be respected. Maybe we can talk to that. It was also
On my own as Florence, I thought you wouldn't have done it. I didn't even have the confidence. But Dr. Emily came to me. I said, you know what, I see something in you. You know, we need a young person on the board. And I'm like, how am I going to do that? And he said, well, we'll campaign for you. We're going to put you up as a candidate. I will take Women for Change, community-based organizations to also, go out there. Believe me, I didn't even campaign. I didn't even know how to campaign. So they put me up as a candidate for the position of publicity secretary. And I'm so young and I'm so new in the movement. But she just said, no, I see something. And I was unopposed. So there wasn't even an issue of me, speaking with 3 other women for this position. But I think they really pushed the issue of she's young. We need something young, we need something fresh. And maybe other people that were interested saw that, maybe it's very difficult to,
to beat a young woman.
Yes, and after that, if you look at every just became a job about working with vulnerable people. I was shaped for life. So I also just want to say that even as you look at us on this table, it's an opportunity. Can I link up? Can you mentor me? Can I also be somebody who you don't have to pass through all the difficult things. So when you have a mentor, they are helping you get 4 steps ahead, as opposed to you climbing that. And I think it really ties in very beautifully with with what Nyapachuma is promoting, which is generational. Yeah, I also see that as lifting, somebody who is younger, mentoring them, and they in turn, pass it on. You also lift and mentor somebody else. Even when we're speaking through issues of GBV over the last 2-3 days, what I kept hearing the facilitators, by Elizabeth Lamed, they kept on talking about the fact that speak up for another person who is vulnerable and is not able to speak for themselves. I just wanted to,
and that's where we bring in the men as well. Men also, they are partners, and they are equal partners in our lives. Thank you very much, ladies. I think there are a lot of things we can say, but just encouraging the young ladies that they should not isolate themselves. There's strength in numbers, so make sure that where there's a cause, you are there. You make yourself available. Thank you very much.
Yeah, we say no,